can see each other and recognize the fine structure of each other's faces is that the wavelength of visible light is a bit smaller than a micrometer or a millionth of a meter. Any objects much bigger than a micrometer do not blur when viewed in visible light, and so visible light allows us to resolve objects down to these lengths. Objects smaller than this, however, cannot be seen with visible light. Atoms exist. They are, as Democritus said, part of the natural world. However, being 1,000 times smaller than visible light, it is simply impossible for them to be seen using visible light. It simply lacks the necessary structure to resolve them. X-rays, of course, are another matter, but for most of our existence, humans did not have access to controlled sources of X-rays. However, even if we cannot see individual atoms, we can still feel their effects. Every time we touch anything with our hands or sit down on a chair, we feel the effects of atoms. The fact that when we sit down we do not carry on plunging through the seat of the chair is because of the summed effect of billions upon billions upon billions of atoms and the electric interactions between them. When we sit down, the entire Earth is pulling on us downwards using the force of gravity. What resists this pull is an electric repulsion that occurs as the matter that is us tries to pass through the matter that is the chair. And this repulsion originates from the atoms making up both, even though we cannot directly discern individual atoms. So for atoms, we can feel their effects even if we cannot directly resolve them. What would be the analog for extra dimensions? If there is a secret geometry to space at the very smallest distances, what effects could this have at larger distances on those unable to resolve the extra dimensions? To understand this, it is worthwhile to consider what a dimension is. We are all familiar with 3 dimensions. These are the directions we move in, the way we label the positions of objects. There is 1 dimension of up and down, and 2 for moving horizontally. We can think of dimensions as the numbers of labels you have to give to say where an object is, in the same way that coordinates on a 2-dimensional sheet of paper allow you to locate any individual point on that paper. But what about 4 spatial dimensions? Or 5? Or indeed 9? Who can actually visualize what is meant by 9 spatial dimensions? Where else can we go in our mind beyond up and down and north, south, east and west? It is hard even to conceive of what extra spatial dimensions would mean. There is no way to make this perfectly intuitive, but we can meet our intuition part of the way. If extra dimensions are small enough, we and all our technology are simply too big and too clunky to resolve them. The fundamental strings of string theory would be small enough to make use of them, but without tools to resolve structure at sufficiently small distances, we cannot sense that they are present. Imagine, could there still be phenomena like the bottom on the chair where extra dimensions could manifest their effects, even if we cannot discern their full structure? Yes. Particles. Physicists unable to resolve the full structure of extra dimensions are only sensitive to gross features. It is not that there can be no information, but the information is limited, a bit like trying to describe one's daily life using a vocabulary limited to 100 words. We could say something, but think how much would be left out. If we blur the ability to perceive extra dimensions, then just before reaching nothing at all, the last thing we would be left with would be particles. This is a statement of the mathematics, and it also follows from the mathematics that the number, type, and interaction of these particles would reflect the geometry and topology of the extra dimensions. And although there may be exceptions, it is generally true that the more complex the topology of the extra dimensions, the larger the number of such particles that would survive. These particles would be the minimal quantum excitation of the extra dimensional geometry. In theories of extra dimensions, they are to the extra dimensions a bit like what the photon is to light and electromagnetism, the minimal quantum lump that is left. And so these particles would be legacies of a higher dimensional theory of gravity when viewed from a lower dimension.